Welcome to The Reconnect with Carmen LaBerge. We're applying the mind of Christ to the matters of the day so that you can connect the eternal with the everyday and get ready to head out into the world that God so loves in ways that honor Jesus. So let's get started. This is The Reconnect.
Inspiring you to bring God back into the conversation of the day.
This is The Reconnect with Carmen LaBerge on Faith Radio.
If we're gonna fly, we fly like eagles, arms out wide. If we're gonna fear, we fear no evil. We will rise. By your power we will go. By your spirit we are bold. If we're gonna stand, we stand as giants. If we're gonna walk, we walk as lions.
Hello, my friend. I'm Carmen LaBerge. This is hour 2 of The Reconnect on this 22nd of July, 2026. I just like to put a pin in it every once in a while, especially when I'm going to do a few headlines, so we know what day we're talking about a particular thing, because most of the stories that we talk about are developing over the course of time. So it's the 22nd of July, 2026. President Trump is set to travel today to Dover Air Force Base to do something that I think is a really important role of the commander-in-chief, the one who sends our young men and women into harm's way. He will be going to Dover Air Force Base today for the dignified transfer of U.S. service members killed in the Iranian strikes in the past several days. So the Pentagon identified 3 service members killed this week in the war with Iran. First Lieutenant Tyler James Freehand, 25, of Hawaii, Private Isabella Gonzalez, 19, from Carrollton, Texas, and Sergeant Angel Rompersad, 28, of Ozone Park, New York. And I just want us to remember and call to account. Memorial Day is shouldn't just be a one-day thing for us. The 4th of July shouldn't just be a one-day thing for us. We should be people who remember. The number of U.S. casualties, men and women killed during the Iran war, is now 18. We now know the number of injured is in the hundreds, just 100 since the beginning of July, 100 service members injured. So let's be praying for folks. Let's be praying today for these particular families, the Freehands, the Gonzalez family, the Rampersads, but so many others as well. Let's thank God for these men and women and their willingness to put themselves in harm's way, to make the ultimate sacrifice to advance the causes of freedom and liberty, both here and around the world. And having just seen Young Washington over this past weekend, the reality of war, it has changed a lot because of technology in the last 250 years, but the reality of the battlefield in terms of the harm done to the human body hasn't really changed that much at all. And I think it's important to note that 1.2 million Americans have given their lives in service to this nation. 1.2 million. These are the latest 3. And so today, as the President of the United States goes to Dover Air Force Base to receive back our fallen, I'd just appreciate if you'd send your prayers along with him. There's a lot of families. It's a lot of loss. It's a recognition that every life is precious and that the freedoms that we have are not free. I also think it brings death into focus. And anytime that happens, I think that we as Christians have an opportunity to talk about the reality that this is not the only life that you have to live. This is just the mortal portion of it. And so what is the life you're going to live forever? And where are you going to live that life forever? And with whom? I'm going to live mine with Jesus in heaven, in the kingdom of heaven. And I hope you will consider receiving that offer today as well. And then I want to talk a little bit about peace. And when we talk about war, right? We talk about the loss of life in war. I'd like to pivot from there to talk for just a moment about peace, particularly peace with our neighbors. Yes, peace on earth and goodwill toward men, absolutely. But peace with our neighbors. In particular, I'd like to talk about Canada. Oh, Canada. Good morning. So the Gordie Howe International Bridge connecting Detroit, Michigan, here in the United States, and Windsor, Ontario, in Canada, is scheduled to open July the 27th. And that is, by all accounts, still going to happen. What is not going to happen is any fanfare. There's not going to be a ribbon cutting. It's not like we're going to meet at the halfway point and celebrate our neighborliness. There will be no neighborly niceties. Why is that? Well, the bridge is going to open and cross-border traffic will commence, but Canada has canceled the celebration. And they did that in response to the U.S. president announcing tariffs on Canadian goods just this week. So I want to just talk for a moment about bridges, but I want to talk about bridges by talking about fences. Because what I wanted to say was, as Robert Frost told us that good fences make good neighbors, I wanted to say, hey, good bridges make good neighbors too. But I thought I better unpack the good fences make good neighbors sort of cultural proverb, because I don't think most of us really know what Frost was talking about. So Robert Frost wrote those words, good fences make good neighbors, in 1941 in a poem called Mending Wall. It was two neighbors getting together to mend the wall. So this turn of phrase, which good fences make good neighbors, it's often referenced to support the idea of separation, of putting up barriers. But what Robert Frost was really describing was how two neighbors worked together to repair a fallen stone fence that separated their properties. The wall was low. It did little beyond marking the line. One neighbor saw that as unnecessary, but the other neighbor recognized the long-term importance of knowing where the line is between two respective properties. And so I think it's good for us to remember that good fences make good neighbors. But the point is not the separation. The point is that we do know that there's a difference between where you are and where I am, or what is yours and what is mine. The point we might need to make today is maybe not so much that good fences make good neighbors as good bridges make good neighbors too. I remember when I was a kid growing up in Tampa, my dad and Mr. Wickman, Bob Wickman, next door, they cut a passageway through this tall hedge that separated our two driveways. They chose a spot where Tiana and I, my sister, could easily pass from our back door to Dee Dee's back door over there at the Wickmans. And then the O'Neills, who lived behind both of us on the cul-de-sac, their grandkids moved in with them at some point. And I don't know how the agreement was reached, but the hedge that separated our two driveways, us and the Wickmans, from the O'Neills' backyard, well, there was another passageway cut through that hedge back there. So, well, all the neighbor kids could freely pass from one property to the next. The hedges made good, quote-unquote, fences. But to foster friendship, bridges, or in this case, verdant natural tunnels, were built. Friend, there's a clear border. There are clear differences between the United States and our neighbors to the north, Canada, and to the south, Mexico. Strong borders matter. Fences matter. But so too do good bridges. And it's by the construction of a bridge that two sides are reconnected, that differences are reconciled. I want you to think about the bridge, literal and figurative, that reconnects you to the one from whom you are otherwise divided. I don't know if there's still time to plan a celebration of the opening of the bridge between Windsor and Detroit. Maybe if you're Christians and you live up there on the border, you could get on that. But I'm certainly thankful, and I celebrate the bridge of the cross of Jesus Christ. It is by that bridge that I am reconciled to God. It is over that bridge that I will pass from this life to the one to come. And I guess I hope to meet you there on the other side of that bridge. Heather Zeiger is going to join us next. We're going to take up some what we might consider science headlines. We're going to talk a little bit about flooding in Texas and air quality across the U.S. And yes, for those of you wondering, we will be sure to touch on that cyclosporious outbreak, even as the CDC still tries to trace the source. That's up next here on the Reconnect. We're going to talk with Heather Zeiger about a cosmic sugar rush. But before we do that, we are going to talk about a couple of other science-y headlines that are weather and atmospheric related. Heather is a science writer. She works out of Dallas. She's also a research analyst for the Center for Bioethics and Human Dignity. She's got advanced degrees in chemistry and bioethics, and we just love to talk with her at the intersection of ethics and society, technology, and, well, science. So, Heather, welcome back to the Reconnect.
Hi, Carmen.
Hi. So it was just a year ago, that we were all responding to the flooding in central Texas and the Hill Country, and now we're doing that again. Maybe just an opportunity for you from Texas to reflect on that.
Yeah, so I will point out, unlike last year, they did have better warning systems in place. So there, so far, unfortunately, only two people have died, but also only 2 people have lost their life in this flood. And the residents there had advance notice so far as you can. So one of the things about the Hill Country flooding is, so I live in Dallas, and that's the very northern tippy top of what we call the flash flood alley. And just to give your listeners an idea of the size of Texas, that flash flood alley extends about 300 or more miles southward. So where the floods are occurring in the Hill Country right now, that's about a 5.5 hour car drive for me. So, Carmen, in one sense, this is part of what happens in Central Texas, and in another sense, your heart breaks for the folks that are affected by this. This year, there isn't as much loss of life, but boy, there's a loss of property. People are displaced, so certainly prayers for those folks. I will say this is. The reason why this happens is because of this confluence of factors. And I think I talked to you guys about this last year. So here in Texas, and particularly in this area, you've got this confluence of factors where you've got the cold air from the north, the warm air from the Gulf. So we get these severe storms, and I get these in Dallas. We get these in North Texas. You can get them in Oklahoma. That's why it's, you get tornadoes in this area. But the problem with the Hill Country is that you also have soil that is limestone and some clay. And that means that it doesn't absorb water very well. So that the water just runs off. And then part of what makes the Hill Country, is a beautiful part of Texas, but it's also along a fault line. And that means that there's lots of steep cliffs, and so the water will run into the valleys. The Guadalupe River rises very, very quickly. So, for example, last week, the Guadalupe River rose 32 feet in 4 hours. And just like last year, this happened in the middle of the night. And so, unlike last year, though, residents were getting phone alerts. They had installed more sirens. I live in a big city, so our warning systems are there's a lot of sirens and warning systems. A lot of these folks that are living in Kerr County, where Camp Mystic was located, the city of Kerrville, Uvalde was affected. These are not huge cities, so this is everyone's a little more spread out, and so they don't have quite the alarm system that we do here. Well, they've installed more alarms, and so that has been very effective. Still, just all of this confluence of factors means that there's going to be flash flooding in this area. And that just means waters rise very quickly, the ground isn't absorbing, and people can get stuck there. We have a saying, even here in Dallas, but especially there, if we have a severe, just a huge torrential downpour, we have a saying, don't drown, turn around. So you don't drive your car through the waters, because you might think it's shallow enough, and some folks here have some very big cars that they think they can get through, and it turns out that water is much deeper than you thought. So something to take seriously. It is.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Once your tires lose contact with the pavement, it doesn't matter how deep the water is. Like,
Right.
I mean, if you've ever hydroplaned on a 1/4 inch of water, you know what we're talking about here. So, yeah, I think don't drown, turn around is good advice. And I think part of the challenge, Heather, is that there's always visitors. It's summertime. People are in campers. I mean, they're from places where they don't know all of the unique features of the terrain that you're talking about in the Texas Hill Country. And so, just thank you for that. This is an important reminder. Like, it does matter that I pay attention to what's unique about the place that I'm visiting. In addition to, asking locals, hey, what do you do? What do you do? What kinds of sirens might I expect? Because where I live, we wouldn't have sirens for like flash floods, but we do have ones for tornadoes. And I suspect that they could utilize those but then I don't know if you'd know what they were for. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I think that all of that is a good reminder, especially for folks who travel and camp and those kinds of things. Okay, I would love to talk with you a little bit about the air quality issues that people are dealing with across the northern United States because of the fires in Canada. Like what is happening? Like, can we get a big filter? I mean, like a smoke filter? What's going on?
Yeah, so Canada is in the middle of its wildfire season, and so there are some very large fires that are occurring specifically in the Northeast. Now, there are some on the West Coast in British Columbia that's affecting a little bit of that northern portion of the state of Washington. But the folks that are really being affected are these fires that are occurring in the Northeast. And if you look at some of the pictures, certain parts of New York, Detroit, Minneapolis, Chicago, those are kind of the big cities, but also the surrounding areas, you'll see this orange haze in the air. And that orange haze is actually due to a lot of particulate matter in the air. So when fires occur, it burns things and it puts these particles in the air, and the way the sunlight bounces off those particles, it gives this orange haze. And so that's showing you just how thick the air is with particles, and that can be hazardous for anyone, right? You don't need to be breathing that stuff, but it's particularly bad for people who are sensitive. Maybe they have asthma, or older folks that might be sensitive to that. So particularly in Toronto, which I was reading up on this, Carmen, we talk about visiting places. I'm actually visiting Canada. I'm visiting not the parts where the fire is. I'm visiting Canada next week. So I was already on their nature websites. And Toronto has particularly bad air quality right now. People have been hospitalized. To be clear, Canada has a wildfire season. So we're within the wildfire season. It tends to not necessarily be as close to some of the places where people live, but it is right now. You can look at where these fires are on the Canadian Wildland Fire Information System, the Canadian Wildland Fire Information System. One of the things that people recommend is staying inside during this time. So this has been going on for about a week, where it's just these large fires particularly in the Northeast. I saw a really neat thing. The Associated Press reported on this. So apparently this is going around in social media. It's called a Corsi-Rosenthal air purifier. And Carmen, you can go shopping for an air purifier, get one of these they're kind of expensive, have these HEPA filters. Those are great and all. This is what you do if you don't want to do that. It is made with a box fan, 4 air filters. I believe they recommend 20-inch by 20-inch air filters, and a lot of duct tape. And basically they have found, an engineer came up with this during COVID. Okay. And so what they have found is you make these air purifiers. Look at that. Where you put the fan on top.
Yeah, if you Google do it yourself, DIY air purifier, it'll come up with Corsi-Rosenthal simple box fan filter.
Yes.
That is so cool. Okay, describe it. Describe it. It's very cool.
I'm going to tell you. So you look at that and you're like, okay, sure. No, they tested this. It actually works really well, and it purifies the air in the room quite quickly. So several people have said, yeah, this works well, and they tested it with these little meters that they can read the air quality in a room, and it actually clears the air in the room quite quickly. So that's a nice, inexpensive way to maybe keep it in your home, keep it in the room that you're in most of the time. Okay,
yes. I will send you from EPA.gov, because this isn't just some wacky thing Heather found somewhere. No, actually the do-it-yourself air cleaner Now, you don't have to get the fancy plastic strap. Duct tape will work just fine, but I'll send you the link on the text line 877-933-2484. And yes, like you, I have now heard Heather Zeiger refer to like fire season in Canada, flash flood season, or hurricane season. Well, we also have cyclospora season. Gross. It's just gross. And so we are going to touch on that, but only briefly, because I want to give Heather an opportunity to talk about the cosmic sugar rush. Yeah, there's sugar out there. That's up next here on The Reconnect. Just take the first step. Just take the first step. I mean, every journey begins with a first step, right? And if you want to hike to the top of a mountain, or if you just want to, well, make it around the block, it all starts with a first step. Just take one step, a step out the door. Now, the same holds true in the journey of discipleship with Jesus. A relationship with Jesus actually begins with a first step. Sometimes taking that first step can be really hard, right? Well, if you've got questions about what it means to begin a relationship with Jesus, just take the first step. Text the word faith to 41224. Our friends at the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association are going to hold your hand as you take the first step or the next step in your walk of faith with Jesus. They're going to help you walk with him and talk with him. Take the first step of faith today. Text the word faith to 41224. Okay, I spend a lot of time trying to put together all kinds of interesting things to talk about. And really what people want today is the do-it-yourself air cleaner fan. So there you go. Who knew? Heather, you have touched on something for people, and I'm telling you, the text line is going crazy. So that's hilarious. Text line's open, 877-933-2484. Heather Zeiger is here with us. She's a science writer. Heather, do you have anything that we need to touch on? I mean, we're going to wash our hands first, but on cyclospora, or can we just talk about the cosmic sugar rush?
Yeah, the only thing I want to say about the cyclospora is that, because you can read about the symptoms and all of that, but it's really hard to trace because it takes about a week for symptoms to set in, and cyclospora is such a small bacteria in the way it reproduces that we don't have, it doesn't culture in the lab, and we don't have good tests for it like we do for things like E. coli. So all of that to say, I know people are frustrated with do I eat at Taco Bell? Do I not? Is it from Taylor Farms? And it's it's just very hard to trace. So practice good hand hygiene, wash your fruits and vegetables, cook your food.
So, yeah, I think cooking it seems to be the answer to the question. Okay. You and I have both read this story that scientists have now discovered a sugar molecule that's common in raspberries and also in self-tanning products. And it's out there in clouds of dust and gas near the center of the Milky Way. What is happening? There's sugar out there?
Yeah, so in the center of our Milky Way, this is called the central
No one is
molecular
surprised.
zone.
Hey, no one is surprised that there's sugar in a Milky Way, by the way. I mean, I feel like someone needs to say that out loud. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm really glad you said that. So they found the sugar molecule, and I'll say this with my Texan accent. It's erythrulose. So, erythrulose. That OSE at the end, ose, that's what tells you it's a sugar. Remember, we know sucrose, fructose, lactose, erythrulose. So it's a type of sugar molecule. And they found this using a radio telescope, right? That you can't actually send anything. We can't send our satellites in the middle of the Milky Way, but we have these neat things called radio telescopes, and it lets us try to find the signatures of certain molecules. So they found before a molecule called ethyl formate, which the name doesn't matter as much. It's a type of ester, and I teach my 10th graders, hey, esters smell good. That's where you get things like banana oil or raspberry oil or that kind of thing. Well, erythrulose is interesting because it's a sugar. And sugars are cool just because they're sweet, but they also make up the backbone of DNA and RNA. Now, some people they have a more materialistic worldview. So as Christians, we don't necessarily believe that the matter in the world is all there is. Those that have this worldview that the way everything was created was from chemicals that then grew into cells that then grew into life. They're looking for things that might be the building blocks for DNA. So while I think it's cool that there's sugar molecules in the middle of the Milky Way, just in and of itself and understanding our universe, some folks are interested in this because they think, hey, could this give us answers to origin of life things? Now, Carmen, the origin of life stuff is, I mean, it's taken a really big leap to go from a sugar molecule to DNA to an organism. So that's always the problem with these origin of life stories. But that is partly why some people are interested in studying this, beyond just the idea that, wow, we are finding complex organic molecules in interstellar space.
Amy is with us. No one is surprised that there's sugar in the Milky Way. I mean, maybe we won't call it stardust anymore. Maybe we'll be looking out there and we'll be like, some sugar dust. Okay, you have struck a nerve with the do-it-yourself box fan air cleaner thing with the filters and the duct tape. People are going wild over it. In fact, we have a report from Kathy who says our worship pastor built one of those for our church workshop area. First of all, don't you love a church that has a workshop area? And so when they're spray painting something or whatever, then after that they turn on this filter and it clears out all of the mist and odors. And she says it's really handy when we're working on VBS scenery or sets for worship. And I'm like, I think I want to go to Kathy's church. First of all, they've got a workshop area. They're making stuff. And they've got a worship pastor who built a do-it-yourself air purifier. Kathy, you might need to come on the show, or your pastor might need to come on the show. That is all really fun. Heather, have we left any science headline untouched today that you're like, well, that's what I really wanted to talk about?
No, I think we hit the kind of the big ones. These weather events, the sugar in the middle of the galaxy is pretty cool, and obviously the box fan air purifier. That's what we can walk away with.
Over there with your friends at the Center for Bioethics and Human Dignity, and maybe somebody over there has already taken up this topic, but we had a conversation earlier this week about a case in, this is just an assignment, by the way, if you're taking notes, Heather. This is a walk-off assignment. There's a situation in Canada. So and I think that from a bioethics and human dignity perspective, what I would like to see is somebody like, okay, you can't have the conversation way out here at the end about whether or not the surrogate mother should have been required by law to terminate the pregnancy of the baby that was conceived in her by IVF using the sperm of the two gay married men. Like, you're so far down the ethics road by then. Like, you've tripped over so many hurdles, like that now to have a conversation about, whether or not she should have to pay them quote unquote damages, they're raising the child. Like, I'm just like, anyway, so I think from a complex story situation where there's just so many ethical threads to pull, and it is a life related story, it just might be one that would be interesting for you guys to work on.
Yeah, Carmen, and if you look on bioethics.com, I've recently posted, there's several articles about surrogacy and some of the issues that you're talking about. This happens all the time with surrogacy.
All right, so I want to, the next time you come on, whatever else is going on in the world of science, I think you and I should talk about that, because obviously it's your area of expertise, and so could we do that? Could we put a pin in that for the next time? Yeah,
for sure.
Awesome. All right. Heather Zeiger will be back. We've got her on the hook. Thank you for joining us today, Heather. You can find her at heatherzeiger.com. You can find what she's writing at bioethics.com. And we love having you with us. We really appreciate it. Next up, Yeah, absolutely. Next up, we got Josh Moody joining us. You know him. It's possible you already listened to God-Centered Life here on the Faith Radio Network. You could hear it every single day during what we would consider like the lunch hour. He's joining us with a brand new book, Unframed, Conversations That Take the Gospel Out of the Box. So how do you frame the conversation about the gospel? Maybe it's time for that to be reframed or even unframed. That's up next here on The Reconnect. All right, friends, when you're listening to Faith Radio in the middle of the day, you are hearing Josh Moody, and you're listening to God-Centered Life. He's joining us now with a new book, Unframed, Conversations That Take the Gospel Out of the Box. Josh, welcome to The Reconnect.
Oh, hi, Carmen. It's great to be with you.
I would, how about you just lay out the premise? Like, how has Christianity been framed, or how has the gospel been framed, and what might it look like or sound like for Christianity to be unframed?
Yeah, so the story behind the book is that a couple of years ago, I began to notice a new dynamic, sometimes called deconstruction. People were deconstructing their faith, and I wanted to explore whether it was exactly the same apologetic issue that I met before, something different or new was going on. And so I actually took the time to interview people, some of whom had deconstructed their faith, others of whom had not. And as I did that and just listened, I thought I detected a pattern. And that pattern then really informed the book. And the pattern I detected was what was being rejected was not what I really recognized as Christianity. And so, in other words, it seemed to me more and more obvious that Christianity is being framed in our culture. That is, it's become associated with political commitments. It's become associated with being anti or anti-various moral behaviors, cultural behaviors. And I'm not saying it doesn't inform those things, but the very nature of Christianity, who Jesus is, what's being rejected when I listen to these people, are various cultural elements rather than the gospel and following Jesus and all full commitment. And so it seems to me the task then is for us to unframe Christianity, present it as it actually is. So the book walks us through that. It just goes through the core nature of the gospel and does so in conversation with some of these other people that I dialogue with during the process. So I really hope it's going to be helpful for people. In essence, we don't need to rebrand Christianity. We need to present it as it really is.
Mm-hmm. I talk about the need for us as believers to represent Christ. It's one thing to, be a representative of an organization or a movement. It's another thing to genuinely represent Jesus, who came to represent the Father. And so I think that when you use the word apologetics, that is a really helpful one, but there might be people listening right now who don't know what that means. So I'm going to ask you to unpack that here in just a minute. But let me remind folks, we are talking with Josh Moody. He is the person who you hear every day on God-Centered Life here on the Faith Radio Network. We're talking about his new book, Unframed, Conversations That Take the Gospel Out of the Box. We'd love to send you a direct link on the text line, 877-933-2484. Josh, I use a turn of phrase, conversational apologetics. I think that most apologetics that are effective today happen conversationally. That's totally what you do. And what you're talking about. So for folks who aren't familiar with the term apologetics, what do we mean when we say that? And then how are you doing that in conversation?
Yeah. So it just means giving an answer for the hope that we have. That's all it means. So a reason for why we believe. And there's all sorts of different theories about the right way to approach it. But essentially, what we're saying is we believe for good reason. And so when someone isn't sure whether they believe, or perhaps they go off to university and they're presented with some scientific or moral claims against Christianity that tells a story that Christianity is the bad guy in the story rather than the hero in the story. we need to have a good reason for why we believe what we believe. That's all apologetics is, and I think we all do that instinctively. Those of us who love Jesus, so it's not apologizing for the faith. That's not what the word means. It just means giving a good reason for what we believe. I love what you're saying about conversational. I'll just give you one story here. One of the men I interviewed in the book. So I determined that I would actually listen first and try to listen really well. And listening is hard work to really understand. And as this man was talking about his journey away from commitment to Jesus to, now atheism, I found out that he said his wife is a Christian. And I was like, oh, okay. So I said, what does she think about your atheism? And he said, she thinks I don't understand religion. And I thought, well, she's exactly right, as I've listened. I don't think he ever really got it. In other words, what he was rejecting was a framed version of Christianity, not the real thing. And so these are the conversations that inform the book. I'm a big believer also in proclamation evangelism. I'm a preacher, as you know, and I think we need to give reasons for the hope. So it's not being passive and never articulating the faith. But if we're with a neighbor or a friend, to actually present the gospel, the Apostle Paul tells us in his letter to the Colossians, he says that we're to pray for an opportunity. And then, of course, when the opportunity comes along, he prays for himself that he would have the boldness to proclaim. So that's my approach at a personal level. So if you have a family member or friend or colleague who isn't a Christian, the first step I always say is to pray for an opportunity. And a book like this or others can help you so that when that opportunity comes along, you're then prepared to give an answer for the hope that you have, which is apologetics that then leads to just, evangelism, telling someone about Jesus.
That's so good. We're talking with Josh Moody. He is, among other things, the host of God-Centered Life here on the Faith Radio Network. We'd love to send you a direct link to godcenteredlife.org. The book we're talking about today, Unframed, Conversations That Take the Gospel Out of the Box. We'll send you those links on the text line, 877-933-2484. When we come back, I'm going to ask Josh to address kind of the age in which we live and how you might think of it as postmodern. Other people already describe it as metamodern, but it's no longer a modern world, and it's certainly not a pre-modern world, although maybe it's more like that than modernism was. Does the age in which we live create opportunities to articulate and demonstrate the gospel in ways that are biblically faithful, culturally relevant, personally transformational? Can we actually take advantage of the age in which we live? That's up next here on The Reconnect. When was the last time someone asked you to pray for them? When's the last time you asked someone to pray for you? Here at Faith Radio, we pray with and for you about the concerns in your life, and we share with you the concerns of others. We are a praying people. So we want to invite you to share your prayer request with us. Our team prays continually and intentionally once a week for the requests that we receive. And so share your prayer requests with Faith Radio by texting or calling 877-933-2484. You can share your prayer requests with us, and you can be confident that we are praying for you. Who do you know that has either given up on the variety of Christianity to which they've been exposed, so deconstructed faith, or simply hasn't ever encountered Jesus and the gospel in a way that they think has any meaning for their life? We're talking with Josh Moody. He is the host of God-Centered Life, which you can hear on the Faith Radio Network. The author of Unframed, Conversations That Take the Gospel Out of the Box. Josh, address the question a little bit about sort of the days in which we live, or the time, the particular, age or time in which we live, and how that, I think, is a real opportunity. I mean, people often see it as a challenge, but I think you would describe it as an opportunity.
I think it really is. Yeah, let me just first very broad paintbrush strokes, just describe like cognitively where I at least think we are. I'll just do that in a moment, and then perhaps give some things that I think can seize that opportunity. So to begin with, I think what we're really facing, you use the word postmodernism, metamodernism, all that, is in our culture, right back to the 18th century, there's been a movement away from centering our lives upon God towards trying to build a life that is centered around the human. And that has proven to be a false gospel, I suppose we could put it like that. It's proven not to be able to sustain meaning and purpose. And so our society, as it seeks to try to find meaning and purpose, is fragmenting in all sorts of different ways. But the core issue is that shifting God first out of the center of things, then to the margin, and then not at all, and trying to build a life structure, whether individually, personally, socially, culturally, nationally, that is based upon the human, and it will not sustain the weight of meaning and purpose, morality. And so we get this division, that we get this fragmentation, we get in some of our cities chaos, frankly, and that's the core issue. Okay, so that's what I would think, and we could debate it, but just giving some cognitive framework for where I'm coming from. Given that, I think you're absolutely right. I completely agree with you. I love it. I think there are huge opportunities right now. And in fact, I think you're beginning to see that. People are realizing, particularly the younger generation, realizing, I don't want to overplay it. I don't think we're looking at massive revival, but there is a turning of the tide, I think, where people at least are realizing that the hope of secularism, the gospel that you just find meaning in your own self and in your work, and you make up your own moral agenda, that gospel is not working. And given that case, people are looking for truth, something sustainable, and community. Well, what an opportunity for the gospel! What an opportunity for the church! And I think even the exponentially increasing technological changes, which were the time which we're living, with of course AI and all the rest, that dehumanization, and ironically enough, the human at the center is leading to a dehumanization, because we can only have humans flourishing with God at the center. That dehumanization is also a huge opportunity for the local church. People are longing for real human community, and of course that's what the church offers. So both, yes, we do have the truth, which is really where the book itself is landing. It's unframing the gospel, like here it is, and trying to walk that through and give answers to the questions that people have about it. But then experientially, for the local church, here's real friendship, here's real community. Come and join in. Massive opportunities, I think, today.
We have the truth, and we have the body. Like
yes.
In the same way that Jesus puts flesh on it, like he comes to reveal the Father. Well, he comes in the body today, the church, to be revealed again. Like, I mean, we have the truth, yes, but not just in our heads. We have it experientially as the body. And I think when you talk about unframing it, you're also talking about, and deconstruction is a good thing to point to. Like, once you've deconstructed it, you've torn down the structure. Well, that's fine, because the body doesn't need the structure. Like, we don't, we're supposed to make the kingdom of heaven tangible and visible and beautiful. And we are the body that does that. So I do think that, I think that there will always be, quote unquote, structural churches. But I do think that when you talk about reframing, understanding that the church is a body of believers before it is a building or a denomination, it is a body first. And
absolutely, yes.
People want that. People want the
do.
reality of the body.
Yeah, they're looking for embodied reality. And John Stott, who was a previous British preacher who some may have heard of, others may not. He was famous in his own day, but he predicted way back, like 1990, when computers were getting going. He said, what this is going to lead to is a huge opportunity for the church, because as we become more and more disembodied and technologically, people will long for the embodied reality. Absolutely prophetic prediction. And as something becomes embodied, I mean, you've got to meet somewhere. I mean, obviously the church isn't a building, but if you've got an embodied reality, you've got to meet somewhere. So that's a building or shed or something. And, once you get more than 4 or 5 people together, you've got to decide, who's going to get the potluck and who's going to preach and who's going to, so the structure comes along. I mean, it's inevitable, but the point,
but the form follows the function.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's all so good. Okay, Josh, we could carry on like this all day, but we're coming up to a hard break. So we're going to let you go. Thank you so much for joining us on the Reconnect. Thank you for hosting God-Centered Life and the role you play here on the Faith Radio Network. We appreciate your ministry and your willingness to partner with us.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on your program. I really appreciate you and Faith Radio and all that you're doing. It's wonderful to be able to partner together.
Yeah, it's very delightful. All right, that's Josh Moody. You can connect with him at godcenteredlife.org. The book we're talking about, Unframed, Conversations That Take the Gospel Out of the Box. I'd love to send you direct links to both of those. We'll do that on the text line, 877-933-2484. All right, I appreciate some of the observations that you guys are making on the text line today. Yes, form follows function. Absolutely. We don't have a formalized faith. We have a functional faith, or, some of us a dysfunctional faith. But I think you get the idea here that Jesus came embodying the truth of who God is. He came to make the Father known. My husband likes to say Jesus came to exegete the Father. He came to reveal the Father. He came in such a way that we could no longer deny the reality of who God is as holy and as love, and that at the cross, those two parts of who God is, those two realities of God's character, that He is truth, that He is holy, that He is love, the cross is where they kiss, and that's grace. And so how do we introduce people to that? We don't just do it as a head exercise. We don't just do it as something that people learn on paper. We have to enflesh it. It has to be embodied. The Holy Spirit living within believers, actively engaging in the same way that Jesus did with the pain and the suffering and the hurt of the world today. People are really suffering. I know I don't need to tell you that. I know you know that. And so what does it look like for you and I to go out there into the world that God so loves and represent Christ? That's who you are. I mean, if you've been thinking, that's not my job, like Josh and Carmen, they can go be cultural, apologists or conversational apologists or whatever, but that's not my job. Okay, literally it is your job. It's literally what you were saved for. You're not just saved from the powers of sin and death. You're saved for something. And what are you saved for? You're saved to advance the gospel in this generation. You're saved so that you can get out there and represent Christ to the world that God so loves, that you can bridge that conversational gap, that you can be the literal hands and feet. We are ministers of God's reconciling love. We're agents of His grace. I'm sending you out there to be shiny today. Let your light so shine before others that they'll see your good works and do what? Glorify God who is in heaven. And how are you going to do that? You're going to do that by God's blessing and presence. All right, friends. Have a great day. God bless. Thanks for listening to The Reconnect with Carmen LaBerge. Let us know how we can help you more fully reconnect the eternal with the everyday. We want to walk with you throughout your journey of discipleship, so let's connect. You can text us at 877-933-2484 or connect with us online at myfaithradio.com and on all our social media. I look forward to connecting with you as we each seek to reconnect the eternal with the everyday.